Good afternoon and welcome to today's Ad Week webinar, where we will be looking at marketing in a multicultural America. And really what we're going to be talking about today with our panel of experts is the importance of culturally relevant advertising. And today's webinar is being sponsored by Spectrum Reach. I'm Stuart File, Vice President of Content here at Adweek, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. We're going to move this forward pretty quickly and in just a second here. But what I want to do first is just to make sure that everyone in our audience knows what to expect from our webinar today and is also familiar with the various features of our webinar platform. Our presentation, as I said, it's going to be a panel discussion with some key experts here, and that should go somewhere in the 35-minute range. Afterwards, we are going to have plenty of time for audience questions, and so we're going to have an audience Q&A time. So if at any point during the conversation, if you have a question for our speakers, just simply use the question tool that you should see there underneath the video window on your screen. Submit your questions that way. And again, after our more formal panel, we're going to have plenty of time to take some audience questions. It's not too late to invite your colleagues to come join us today, and we would really love it if they would. About 15 minutes ago, we sent everyone a final reminder email for today's webinar. In there, you will find a link over to the registration page. So grab that link, send it off to your colleagues. They still have plenty of time to use the link, go over to the registration page, register, and come on in and join us live. But if they can't make it live, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand. And we're going to send you a link to that on-demand version later this afternoon. So check your email sometime 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock today. You'll get that link over to the on-demand recording. Today's webinar is more conversational than slide-based, and while we do have some slides, and we do have a few stats on those slides, and we are making them available for download. So if you do want them at any point, you will find them in Event Resources. That's the tab that you see over there near where the question tool is. So you can feel free at any point to download a PDF of the slides if you need that takeaway. Lastly, I want to be sure to encourage everyone to please check out the Adweek webinar calendar, www.adweek.com/webinars with an S. We've got probably right now about 11 or 12 upcoming webinars posted there, really taking us through the last week of April. So as you can see, it's a pretty busy calendar covering all different topics going on in marketing. We have another one coming up related to multicultural that looks at really using influencers in the multicultural world. We have things coming up on connected TV, marketing in a cookieless world. Really, if there's something going on in this day and age in marketing and media, we've got a webinar covering that. So see what's coming up, look for something that interests you, sign up for one of those. You'll also get full access to our entire archive of on-demand webinars. That's every webinar we have done over the past year. So you can go back in and check any of those out. So let me take a moment here and introduce our speakers before I bring everybody up on screen. So we are very happy to be joined by, again, this is about as prestigious a panel as you can get in looking at multicultural. So let me start here with Tim Chizano. Tim is the VP of Kernel, which is, of course, a creative group within Spectrum Reach. And so Tim oversees really Spectrum Reach. This is a 240-person production and creative services department. And that department also includes 3 multicultural centers of excellence. We are also, again, joined today by Carlos Santiago. Carlos, of course, while he does run his own company, the Santiago Solutions Group, you may know him best of all, of course, as the co-founder, and he's also an advisory board member at AIM. AIM, of course, being the ANA's Alliance for Inclusive and Multicultural as part of that. So, of course, he's certainly a leader in the multicultural arena. Nakia Clements is the chief media officer over at Decoded, where she oversees a digital forward media department with a $275 million of investment on behalf of, again, wide range of clients. And Nakia certainly has been through the media and marketing world for the past couple of decades. And then finally, from MediaCom, we have managing partner Ronald Mendes. Ronald is the multicultural lead over at MediaCom and certainly plays a key role in all aspects of their multicultural media and marketing efforts. So I want to welcome the four of you, and bear with me here. As we all know, these worlds on these things become a little complicated. So welcome. Oh, I just brought the wrong person up. So let me fix this, because it's not a video webinar unless you bring an incorrect person up on stage. There we go. Thank you, Tim. Welcome. And again, you all can hear me. I want to keep the four of you up on stage. I am very happy to be just the disembodied voice as we go through all of this. So welcome to the four of you. We're looking forward to a really compelling and interesting conversation. So Tim, let me at least start this conversation off with you, as our sort of resident creative here. And one of the terms that we used was really cultural resonance. And marketing in a multicultural world, and sort of taking advantage of some of that. Actually, even before we get to that, there were just two stats I'm going to flash here to the audience. Again, the first one, and why we're talking about multicultural, is the fact that, again, 44% of the US population is projected to be multicultural by 2030, right? That's only 8 years from now, 9 years from now. And adding in, again, that culturally relevant ads have up to a 3x increased brand perception, ad effectiveness, and purchase intent scores. And these are 2019 numbers. So with that number in mind here, and let me move straight into video now that we've covered those. Tim, can you talk a little bit about like the creative and cultural resonance and what you see as sort of some of the best practices and really sort of how to, really connect with audiences this way?
Absolutely. First, thank you, Stuart. Of all the things I've done in my career, this is a true highlight and an absolute pleasure to be here today alongside Nakia, Ronald, and Carlos. I think the two most critical aspects are authenticity and awareness. Your brand needs to truly be authentic, and as does the way that you portray your message. There's an old Ogilvy quote about the consumer's level of intelligence, which said slightly differently is that they can smell BS. And they will call you out on it, or they won't engage with you if they don't feel that you are being authentic. So authenticity, I think, is key in this conversation. And if you use that authenticity and you apply keen awareness and understanding going into the creative process, you can optimize that relationship with your audience. This means awareness of your audience's perspective, awareness of current events, awareness of pop culture, awareness of culture, awareness of the tone of your brand, and awareness in the context in which your creative is going to be viewed. If you do all this in the right combination, and if you're truly authentic to your brand, then you can drive awareness in the right way for your brand.
Great. Anybody else? I'm sure, look, as we talk about cultural resonance here, I'm sure that that's a big topic as you guys go forward. What do you, maybe it would just help. What do you define as culturally resonant? So, as these go through, as you reach out. So Ron, I don't know, let me just sort of like point that one in your direction here. But let's get our terms sort of in order.
Yeah, so, as we think about being culturally relevant, there could be multiple things that come into play, right? So it could be language, it could be representation in the ad. One of the things that we always tell our clients is that, we need to do our best to try to reflect the everyday reality of the ethnic segments that we're trying to connect with. And if we're leaning into multicultural insights as we're developing the creative concepts, those insights are probably universal, but they're much more amplified amongst multicultural consumers. So it doesn't alienate everybody, but brings more people into the conversation. And one small example I can give in terms of being authentic or culturally relevant it's there was one instance with one client where, that we portrayed a family in an ad. But it was just the immediate family. It was it didn't include grandma. It didn't include multiple kids in the household. And when we showed the ad to Hispanic consumers, all of a sudden they asked, "Well, where's the rest of the family? Why is the little kid playing by themselves? Where's grandpa? Where's grandma? Where's everybody else?" So just by sprinkling in additional elements of their everyday reality. Hispanics tend to have more kids in the household. They tend to live in multi-generational households. Those are some of the elements that can easily bring authenticity and cultural relevance into an ad.
Anyone else want to add?
Yes, good morning or good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are. And thanks, Stuart, for bringing us together. I think that one of the key points that has been mentioned is going to be a continued theme throughout this next hour, and it is authenticity. Yes, indeed, consumers smell BS far away these days. And it is difficult to be authentic. And most brands understand that representation in ads is the first step. But many times in the creative process, brands create ads that are meant to be either generic or for a majority population that no longer exists, and put then casting that is multicultural in that situation. And when consumers perceive those ads, they're perceiving them as whitewashed. Not a pretty word, but it comes through very loud and clear in our Cultural Insights Impact Measure with over 158,000 evaluations of the last 3 years. And we see that consumers are wanting to be represented as accurately as they possibly can, as Ronald mentioned, in the richness of the context of their family structure, of who they really are. And many times we stop at a place that make us comfortable for us, but for the brand, but not necessarily for the consumer. So finding that alignment, finding that sync, being in sync is resonating. Resonating is palpating your heart at the same time, at the same pace as your intended target. And in order to do that, we truly need insights to make that authenticity really come to life.
Also, I wanted to add, in terms of authenticity, I've been thinking about it a lot, especially in our pandemic we're in, all the things that are happening in our country. And what I'm finding too is authenticity, brands are needing to take it a step further now and thinking about what that really means. Do your values align with your consumer? That's something that customers are really thinking about today. There's some great studies released by Nielsen and H Code that release some qualitative insights. 58%, Black consumers are 58% more likely to expect the brands they buy to take a social stance. And they're 37% more likely to buy that brand when you take a stance. Hispanic consumers, 46% value their Hispanic identity more than they used to. I think I've seen this firsthand, within the past 10 years. 47% worry more than their parents about the climate and the environment. 74% are more likely to purchase from a brand that supports their community or causes they care about. And you see this every day with the Georgia voting laws. The Delta CEO came out initially in support. Maybe a day later, he said, nope, sorry, that's not what I meant. I don't support it. Coca-Cola, its entire business is based off of support by multicultural consumers, has come out strongly against those laws, and they own Atlanta, basically. So there's another level, a deeper level of authenticity that is expected today as well.
That's a great definition, Nakia. And so I want to take the multicultural approach, right? We understand sort of the creative, but I'd love to hear from you just a little bit about what I want to call sort of the media approach into sort of multicultural, because I think that there is often a sense of, well, we had a webinar not long ago in which, should I say, that the speaker was basically accusing media agencies of what I would call insensitivity, of not purchasing multicultural media, of not having that, or to sort of limit some of the purchase. But so a multicultural approach to media, what actually is involved in that? What is sort of the best approach? Where should people be looking?
Well, I think media, it is an expertise within marketing, right? Of course, but it always starts with the consumer and understanding the consumer. That's the first step. And I think for myself personally, what makes me a good media strategist, I'm a media strategist by trade, right, is that I'm very curious and interested in what's happening with my customers. So you always have to start with that. What do they care about? What do they watch? And of course, how they consume media. One big factoid to know is now that I'm in a pure digital world now is, all of the trends start with the multicultural audiences. And this is something that we've been talking about for the past 10 years. But, that's something that is a battle in the forefront with agencies and clients today, is making sure they understand and they're growing and investing in those audiences. But I think what's most important is you can no longer afford to be in a place of not knowing. You can't not know what you don't know. Any marketer who wants their brand to survive, you have to prioritize an understanding of all of your customers equally. You can't just leave it to your multicultural expert in another office. Everyone needs to be accountable and have an understanding. We're in an era where Black Twitter kills brands. And what is Black Twitter? A large group of Black people on Twitter. I've tried to monetize Black Twitter. I've tried. I've talked to Twitter senior leadership. I've been like, how can I buy them? How can I use them? How can I deploy Black Twitter? You cannot buy Black Twitter. You have to understand your brand and your audience, and you have to figure out how to be a part of Black Twitter, right? You can't buy it. You can't monetize it. Black Twitter kills brands. Black Twitter killed Paula Deen's brand. Everybody remember Paula Deen? That's the absolute best beef stew recipe ever. She had restaurants, a show, brands gone, multi-millions of dollars lost because of Black Twitter. But Black Twitter can build brands. Popeyes. I love Popeyes, especially when I'm in New Orleans. The Popeye chicken sandwich. I feel like that's all I heard about last year. Just because of Black Twitter alone, making memes, talking about how delicious the sandwich is. And I'm sorry, don't sue me. I have not tried it yet, but I heard it's delicious. They had a 20% rise in sales in 2020 during a global pandemic. Black Twitter, because of the magic of Black Twitter. So and you cannot monetize it. You have to be alert, astute, and you have to understand your brand, and you have to understand how you can align with those values. So understanding your customer is the first thing. So you should always seek expertise in certain areas of specialization, of course, because I think for certain cultural relevance things, you need those experts. But everyone has to be responsible for, and I don't know if this is the right term, a total market perspective. That should actually be the norm. So if you're not at least learning or on the path to grow your multicultural expertise of all of your customer base, you need to tell your brand teams and your agencies to get started yesterday because the future of your brand is going to depend on it, and you're already behind.
I think just to add to Nakia's points, it's understanding the nuances, right? I think as an industry, we do a really good job of understanding what threats all the audiences together, and we need to do a better job of understanding the nuances that exist, right? And how media plays a role in terms of the content and the channels that multicultural audiences are gravitated towards, right? So, as we think about passion points, and I'll give you focus group of one, right? I love to watch soccer in Spanish. I can't watch it in English, right? But I can't watch the NFL in Spanish. I have to watch it in English. So it's really understanding what the role of media is, as well as the role of language, at least from my point of view, Hispanic, right? And then how do we layer those nuances into the overall communications plans to ensure that we're capturing the consumer in environments where they're showing up. It's no longer about a one-size-fits-all approach, right? If we think about some media behaviors, terrestrial radio still performs really well for Hispanics and the Black African American segment, right? But from a general market perspective, we've seen brands move away from that more into streaming. If we think about the Asian segment, digital really works well in terms of connecting and driving reach. So again, it's understanding the nuances and ensuring that it's included as part of the overall communications plan to address them.
Yes, I also think that brands are in a place of transformation because the key metrics that have driven our work in the past to target consumers has been reinvented. Before, it was ad likability and media reach. And that's not enough anymore. Media reach does not guarantee the deep connection with the consumer. Just as likability does not guarantee a deep connection that resonates culturally with that consumer. It is now about relevancy, cultural relevancy. And it's not just stopping in representation. It's not just a show that has a broad ethnic, racial representation. It is about truly the richness of the characters and the storyline and ensuring that they accurately portray and positively portray our multicultural consumers with respect to all, not just us, people of color. But what was enough before is not enough now. The work that Tim is doing, for example, to create it on a really authentic ad falls short when you place it on content that is not truly authentic. The magic to the brand in terms of purchase intent happens when you combine high cultural relevancy ads in high cultural relevancy content.
So Tim, as they were talking about things that you create and where they go, and with, of course, the multicultural centers of excellence. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ads that you see that have really sort of meet the mark when it comes to cultural resonance and really sort of the process that you might go through to actually get to that point? I know we talked a little bit about research and what we need to know, but really what data is being used to sort of max this out?
Well, I love that the overall theme here has been deeper understanding and beyond the obvious places that you may look if you're not already in this space. And I'm really lucky in that, it's a large team and we're spread across 60 markets. So we have true local insights. We are neighbors and we are consumers in these businesses. And that's a lot of authenticity gets drawn out because of that. So as far as best practices go, and with that authenticity in mind, there is an element of structure because there's a science behind the art. If you're going to stay authentic to your brand, then the overarching brand message needs to be on point of what you're intending to do in the first place. And to Nikia's point, that should be leaning in at this point. But then as you can construct that overarching message, you should think of things in ways that are not just even language versions, but in modular components so that you can resonate really specifically depending on where you're placing your media, especially in an addressable world where you can get really detailed and granular with that conversation. So if you construct things that have this overarching message and a tone that can resonate based off of who you are as a brand, but then you construct things from a scientific perspective almost that create these modular components so that you can make sure that you have the right people portrayed, so that you can make sure that you have the right language nuances portrayed, that you can make sure that there are enough family members in the living room, to the point earlier made. That can get really effective. It requires a deeper level of understanding because there are nuances there that you simply cannot get wrong. But it also creates a lot of opportunity because, again, especially with how well media can be targeted these days, you almost need to be doing this in general, but especially as it relates to multicultural marketing. If you construct this in the right way, you can be authentic and you can be really specific with that message as well. But it's a balance of both the art and the science.
Got it. So I want to get to one thing here. Look, 2020 has been a year of reckoning in a lot of areas, in particular in areas related to cultural inclusivity, and how we go that way. What I'd love to hear from each of you is sort of like, what out of 2020, first off, what changes that occurred over the past year, or which one change, feel free to pick one, do you feel sort of encapsulated stuff and where we need to focus? And what are maybe the mistakes that people have made as they've gone through here and as they go forward that they may want to avoid? So as we look at sort of the shift of imagery in ads, the shift of targeting in ads, look, we all know areas of institutionalized racism as it shows up in everything from AI into all other areas. What's changing for the good? Where do we need to keep moving after this? And what, again, where were people making errors? And so, Ron, can I, start off with you and maybe work my way around the grid here, or do you want a second to think and want me to go to someone else?
No, I can start. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we're having a conversation, it's a change for the good. I think, brands and marketers are trying to understand the nuances, are trying to understand gain a deeper understanding of the consumer that they're trying to connect with, and they're doing their research. They're looking to learn. I think, as we think about some of the misconceptions or mistakes that have been made in the past is, while total market, quote unquote, was a great in theory, it kind of fell short in practice because a lot of marketers took it as a one size fits all approach to marketing, and we're good. Another misconception that was being that I've come across a few times is the fact that we're fine just targeting everybody through general market, and we're not taking what we call general market media, and not taking into consideration the nuances that exist in terms of content and media consumption, right? So the fact that we're now having conversations to understand the differences, to understand, well, let me phrase it, to understand the similarities, but more importantly, the differences, the nuances, I think it's a great step in the right direction. One thing I will say is that, multicultural marketing is not about advertising during specific months, right? Like Hispanic Heritage Month, Pride Month, Asian Pacific Islander Month. Like it's about being consistent and engaging this audience, and not trying to jump in during these key cultural calendars to engage the various audiences.
Nakia, you look like you've got something that you wanted to say in this area.
I'm listening to Ronald, and I'm thinking that 10 years ago we were talking about this tipping point that was coming, and it's already happened. And then I think about 2020, and something that sticks out for me was the presidential election. And don't worry, I'm not going to get political, but I had the pleasure of working on a presidential campaign. And the day that Jim Clyburn endorsed Biden, our hearts sank. We were like, we're over. We're dead on arrival, basically, in our campaign. And I don't know if people know this, but we are in an age today where a president cannot win an election without significantly winning multiracial voting blocks. The last time that occurred was, and I'm talking about winning just off of the white vote, was George Bush in 2004 against John Kerry. Now, one can say John Kerry wasn't the best candidate, but still, that was the last time that happened. So we're in an era where we had two older white men, and only one of them won because he appealed to multiracial voting blocks. So that is a harbinger, if you want to call it a harbinger, a tipping point. That happened. That's it. We are post that now. So I think we really have to start, marketers and brands need to start thinking about, okay, let me make sure I'm tapped into what's happening today. The census, unfortunately, is not out yet. But, the percent of under 30 population is estimated to be 26% Hispanic. The Asian population is estimated to be approximately 6%, which is double what it was 10 years ago when I worked in multicultural dedicated. And the median age for the total U.S. is 38. The Black population median age is 32. The Hispanic population median age is 29. Buying power is only increasing faster than the white population. The Asian buying power is actually the fastest growing, currently estimated at 1.2 trillion. Hispanic is at estimated 1.9 trillion, and Black buying power 1.4 trillion. So, I think there's a lot of trends, and these are all facts, information. This is not my opinion or anything. These are facts. So I just think that, the tipping point has happened. We're post tipping point now. And it's time for everyone to be educated and be ready and to have a future-proof your brand, because that's what it's about now.
And one thing I just want to add to one of the stats that Nakia was sharing in terms of median age, right? As you can see, based on those stats, the multicultural audience is that much younger than their counterparts. And what that means is that they haven't reached their peak earning years. So, I feel that sometimes marketers look at household income as a layer to targeting and whatnot, which inherently may leave some multicultural audiences off from the prospect pool. But let's keep in mind, again, if the median age for Hispanic is 28, 29, have they reached their peak earning years? It's not a fair apples to apples comparison when we're just looking at household income. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Carlos, I mean, you're the driving force behind the multicultural arm of the largest brand marketing association, right? As you're working there within the ANA. So, in a world like that, can you sort of talk a little bit about, again, what you saw again in the sort of that reckoning of disparities and inequities in 2020, and sort of what that means in 2021? And I guess one of the other things, which is, Nakia very, rightly brought up X number of groups that fall into that multicultural world. But, there are a heck of a lot of others as well. How do you go about and represent all of that? So.
No, it's a great question. And, I think it's a daily challenge for marketers. I think that when we took a pulse in 2018 of marketing practices, we learned that only 1 in 8 marketers were incorporating cultural insights in their communications across the multicultural segments. Only 1 in 8. It would be interesting to understand where we are today. We are, in a way, fortunate that marketers have responded with the level of interest to our call at AIM for tackling systemic inequities that start with our own communications and what we are producing and airing. And that has created a lot of interest in new questions about not just what to do, but I think that we are still in a journey of finding how to bring those insights to life. When we looked at the Super Bowl ads this year, we measured that more than a third of ads resonated at the strongest level in the top quartile among white non-Hispanics, even though representation of African Americans across all the ads in the Super Bowl was at an all-time high of over 35% of all the cast was African American. So they are getting the representation, but still they're falling short of the themes that we were touching today of authenticity, of accurate reflections, of respecting culture, of celebrating that culture. So marketers are on their way. It is not going to be overnight. You do not understand a culture and bring in sync with your brand identity and DNA, like Nakia said, overnight. And to do it across all segments, all at the same time, it's difficult. So you're going to start systemically, right? You're going to start first with the ones where you have some equity, bringing it up, increasing the threshold of what you deem acceptable, and then slowly building that equity with the other segments, perhaps Asian English and LGBTQ, where you don't have history. So it's a process. We are seeing it. We need to demonstrate again the how to do this. And I think that's the next frontier.
You know, I want to get a chance. We've gotten a ton of good questions coming in from the audience, but I want to get to some of those in just a second here. But what I want to do is I want to ask each of you for one thing, and that is if you could, to our audience, one takeaway from today related to their multicultural approach, that they can do something a little bit different tomorrow as they do this. What is one thing that you would just say to either get them started or approach things differently, beginning with 10 minutes from now? So, Tim, let me start off with you.
I would say it is the awareness of the macro and the micro of the conversation. I love the stats in regards to where we are today as a country, but there's so many different layers to the conversation so that you can get really specific with understanding your audience, and that a Hispanic audience in El Paso, Texas is not the exact same as a Hispanic audience in Florida. And that goes across every ethnicity. It goes across every genre. If you can be aware of the macro and get specific because you are leaning in and you're being intentional to get granular with the micro, then you've got a lot of room to run and do really good things for your brand.
Okay, I'm going to work my way clockwise here, Nakia. At least how I'm seeing the grid. So.
Yes. I'm going to give a more tactical media-related takeaway as it pertains to digital. This is something that I talk about with my team all the time. Especially if you're a performance-based brand and you're investing in digital, make sure that you are adequately testing and investing in various audiences. Sometimes you're under investing in different multicultural audiences, so it doesn't build, and then you're not going to get the ROI that you expect, and you can't really compare it the same as a typical general ROI, right? So I know I'm getting very tactical, but this is something as a marketer to ask a brand manager to ask your agency, are we adequately testing and investing in audiences? Because if you don't invest and grow in the digital space in those audience over time, you're not going to have the insights and learning, and then you're not going to gradually increase your chances of improving your ROI. So that's a good tactical takeaway.
Okay. Ron, let's go over to you.
So it's also along the lines of testing, right? So what I will say is you're not, in essence, testing the audience. You're testing how you're engaging with the audience. Many times, I've been in the industry now, going on 26 years doing multicultural. And what tends to happen a lot, or used to happen a lot, is I will go and talk about the multicultural opportunity and say, okay, we're going to test Hispanic. But then if the test didn't work, I couldn't re-engage the client for another 2-3 years or until there was a rotation on the team to then have the conversation again. And I think we always, as an industry, we fall into, we're going to test the audience. We are not testing the audience. We are testing how we're engaging with the audience. And if that test does not give you the results that you're looking for, the same way that we go back in general market to the drawing board to figure out what went wrong, tweak, and then re-engage, it's the same thing we need to do from a multicultural perspective. Because never have I ever seen a test in general market not work, and then a client turn around and say, well, we're never going to advertise in general market again. Talk to me in 2 years.
And Carlos, bat and clean up here. What takeaway you want to give?
Yeah, this is a journey, and it's going to take time, and it's going to take testing. I think everyone has said that, so that's beautiful to hear. Testing from the very beginning, before you're even writing the creative brief. This is not testing at the end and then trying to figure out, oh my God, why here? No, you need to find out what insights really align with the brand. Understand what is the difference between a cultural insight, a cultural nuances, and a cultural cue. They all are helpful, but they all have limitations, and they all need to be aligned and synchronized, as we said, to resonate with the identity of the brand. And the earlier you do it in the process, like we've been talking, Ronald and Nakia, from the strategic perspective, and then through the creative process that Tim talked about, and then all the way to the channels, and then making it the customer experience, all 360 within that cultural context. That is going to raise the purchase intent as we know it and make the brand really be sustainable.
Great. Well, listen, I want to take some questions from the audience here. Let me just pop back up on screen just so people don't think I'm just a disembodied voice. We do want to move into some audience Q&A time. So for each of you and everyone in the audience, if you do have a question for our speakers, and a whole bunch of people have been submitting them along the way, just use the question tool that you see there. It should be on the right underneath this video window. Submit your questions. We're going to get to as many as we can. If we don't get a chance to get to your question, I always do send them over to our sponsor. It happens to be Spectrum Reach in this instance, ideally to distribute out to some of our panelists. So there is the opportunity for an offline response. But again, submit it. We want to get to as many as we can. Let me just provide a quick reminder here for everyone. Today's webinar is being recorded. Obviously, we get to that question. And we're going to send you a link to that on-demand recording. Probably 4 o'clock-ish this afternoon. Feel free to share that link with your colleagues. So if you know someone who is going to get some benefit, or you want to participate in this conversation as well, send them that link. Better yet, they can register now, and we'll send them that link as soon as that recording goes live. So I do want to get into some of these audience questions, and I just, I keep writing down numbers for all of these. But let me just start off. This is one, and it's coming from, I guess, the way that they describe themselves as a heritage brand, right? It's a brand I think each of us would recognize. I'm not going to give the brand away here, but wants to be, starting the brand, and a heritage brand, large heritage brand here, starting to tackle some of the multicultural shifts, but also doesn't want to be viewed as inauthentic. Right. This is, shall we say, approaching multicultural from a position of fear, insofar as they don't know where to begin, and they don't want to come away just sounding horribly tone deaf. And I think we've all seen instances where things like that have occurred as well. So any advice that any of you want to give on that one? And I don't know, let me start off. Tim, I'll start you off on this question so we can avoid the ungainly, awkward silence of 4 people thinking the other person's going to answer.
So if it's a heritage brand, for some reason I just immediately think of that brand sitting on a consumer shelf, and then I start thinking about what type of person that consumer might be, and that can be through the traditional lens of how that brand was looking at their consumers. But then it's getting a deeper level of understanding of thinking about what that person did throughout the course of their day, what their background is, what they do for work. Like, it gets into the really micro level of who their consumers are, which may sound obvious, but if you turn it around, if you actually personalize that, then you can start to drive some connective tissue. At the end of the day, these are products and these are services that human beings connect with, that human beings interact with. If you have true understanding, or if you want to be truly understanding of who your audience is, that connection should start to become pretty organic. Because if you're a heritage brand, then people have been buying your product, or they've been engaging with your service already. So you're probably not that far off. I understand that it can be difficult to flip a switch, or you're concerned about doing the wrong thing. But if you're authentic in regards to what got you to this in the first place, and you truly think about that consumer through that lens of what does it look like on the other side when they open their cupboard, and that product is looking back at that person, who they are, and what have they been doing that day, then I think you can start to answer some of the questions for yourselves, and obviously have the right partner to help you along the way.
We can't hear you, Stuart.
My bad. Thank you. I thought you were raising your hand, and instead you're correcting me on the. I remind our speakers on every webinar, stay on top of the mute button. So there we go. I was going to say, Nakia, I saw you nodding on that one. Was there something that you wanted to add?
Oh, I think Tim is spot on, and I would say when I worked on multicultural for Walmart, which is one of the top corporations in the world, top corporation in the United States, and it's for a reason. That very reason, they have a very intense and very detailed store trading system. So you could call any store in any district in any zip code, and they understand who their customer is from a certain radius and who they are. And it's very, very detailed. And any information I needed to do my job at a national level, it all bubbled up. So it really does start with understanding your proposition as a brand and aligning those values with your audience. And that makes it easier because then it feels organic and then you come from an informed place.
And Carlos, was there something you wanted to add on that one?
I believe that everyone obviously has provided some very powerful insights. I also think that brands are thinking now about diversifying the entire team that is bringing the creative executions and the planning to life. Behind the camera, of course, in front of the camera, of course, from the very beginning, those that are in the discovery of the insights have the diversity right there, the years of experience to be able to put their fingers with more context into that alignment that is so hard to get between the consumer and the brand in an authentic level. So all throughout, there are so many experts in this industry that really understand culture, and let them be of guidance to you, because that can avoid that level of being nervous about what you're going to say. But of course, being authentic and being organic is part of being yourself, and it's a journey. 100% is not necessarily achievable all the time, but it's the continued journey towards having that connection with that consumer.
Got it. You bring up a really good point, and just as a follow-up question here, Ron, and let me, as you weren't the one to chirp in here, what do agencies and brands need to do? How do they go about, right? Can you be multicultural? Can you reach a multicultural audience without a multicultural team, right? Can you do multicultural media buying without having multiple cultures on your buying team? Can you have creative that reaches out if you don't have that diversity within your group?
Ooh, that's okay.
Sorry. Yeah, let's put you on the spot for a second here.
Put me on the spot. Look, I think diversity of thought is key in every aspect of marketing. And that allows you to have different perspective on culture, on insights, mindset, and so on and so forth. So the more diverse and the more diverse the team is, I think the more perspectives you'll get from all aspects, from messaging, from media consumption, and so on. Do you need specialists? It definitely helps to have specialists, right? If we do our job right from a planning perspective, and we pull back the layers of the onion as deep as we should, planning, in essence, planning is planning. It's understanding consumer behavior. It's understanding how to connect. Culture it's a little bit harder, right? And I think that's where diversity of thought and of the team really comes into play to help. But I think there still needs to have some layer of specialty. I mean, let's think back a few years ago. We had specialty agencies, a lot of them. You had Zuby, the Vidal Partnership, We went from having the specialty agencies to a total market solution when that came about, where all, the big media conglomerates were trying to do multicultural. Some failed, some didn't. I think as I'll quote Mark Pritchett, during one of his panels a while back, he felt that total market was taken too far. And we needed to revert back to some level of specialty within marketing, right? So again, I think diversity of thought is key, and that's the true way that the way to ensure we don't fall short.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to weigh in on this too.
Please.
Thank you.
I spent a lot of time on the agency side as well. For me, and I've seen it, Ronald and I have seen it all, just hiring a bunch of, diverse looking people doesn't solve the problem. That's performative. Okay. Mm-hmm. What you need is you have to start with accountability. Mm-hmm. Accountability for understanding your audience and serving those audiences. That's where it is. And it has to be with everyone, from your senior leadership, from your C-suite to all the people working on that team, regardless. Because what happens is that the success of that team being able to work together, you're not going to grow and evolve if people think, oh, it's just Nikia's job because she's the Black girl on the team to solve our problem, right? That's not going to do it for you. And it's not going to help you innovate and get ahead. Everyone has to have accountability, and they have to have a desire, and they have to understand that it is critical for your business that you solve this and you understand this. And that has to come from everyone. So I just want to mention that.
I love that, Nikia, because in order to achieve diversity, we have to include everyone. And the fact is that as many specialty experts as we can bring to a team that are of people of color, multicultural background, everyone is bringing experiences. I think that what is needed is a mindset of asking the right questions and having sensibilities for all cultures. Because we're not all going to be experts on everything. Yes, some of us are intersectional, Hispanic, gay, whatever, with a mixed family, but we're still not experts in everything. We don't know everything. We're marketers. We're like doctors. We ask the right questions. And by asking the right questions, we will get to know exactly the patient that we have in front. It's more of a mindset than a skin color.
One thing I'll add also is that I think multicultural is at a point where I'll compare it to digital. A few years ago, you had your digital specialist, and the digital discipline kind of lived within a team. Nowadays, digital is everywhere, and everybody is expected to know about digital. So I think multicultural is at that tipping point where everybody should be expected to know, and to Nikia's point, be accountable for it.
Mm-hmm. He's muted again.
Here we go. There's my mute button. Keep tapping it. It won't change. Listen, I want to keep this conversation going. Unfortunately, we don't have time to keep this conversation going. There are about 6 questions I had highlighted here that I really wanted to get to. We just don't have time. I want to take a moment and thank the 4 of you again as we go on here. And actually, as I thank everyone, let me just make sure that all 4 of you are up on screen, and I am not. Sorry. There we go. All right. So I did want to thank again our 4 speakers here. Tim from Spectrum Reach, and Carlos from again AIM, Ronald from MediaCom, and Nikia from Decoded. Just a great conversation. I think we should keep this conversation going. And of course, I'm sure you would all agree. I would recommend our audience keep this conversation going as they approach things. This is just, but again, just really great insights from everybody. I want to provide some final reminders to our audience here. Again, webinar has been recorded. If you want to share this out there, bring your colleagues over, have them catch this recording if you think that they're going to benefit from this. Share that link, share the link we send to you about 4 o'clock today with them as that goes on. And lastly, I want to remind everyone, adweek.com/webinars, our webinar calendar. Just again, check that out, see what's coming up. You'll get some benefit, especially again, if you enjoyed today's webinar. So again, thank you very much to our speakers today. I want to thank thank you Spectrum Reach for bringing this to us. Thanks to our audience for taking time out of your busy day. We look forward to seeing everyone at an upcoming Adweek webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thanks for having me.